So in the first part of the gospel that Father Pat proclaimed, we heard the apostle approach Jesus and say, "Teacher, we saw someone driving out demons in your name. We tried to prevent him because he does not follow us. He's not one of us." And Jesus said, "Do not prevent him. There is no one who performs a mighty deed in my name who can at the same time speak ill of me, for whoever is not against us is for us." Today's Old Testament reading and today's gospel are making the same point, and it's this: our God surprises us by his generosity. And he not only gives natural gifts to all people. Remember, in Matthew's gospel, he says, God causes the rain to fall on the just and the unjust, right? But he gives even supernatural gifts to those whom we often consider as other or outsiders. The followers of Moses and the followers of Jesus were scandalized at this. However, both Moses and Jesus corrects them. Just 2 weeks ago, Pope Francis was in Singapore. And while there, he was addressing a group of interreligious youth. There were Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, all sorts, Christians, all sorts of different religions were together. And in the midst of their time together, the Pope, as he often does, he went off script. And he just was visiting with these youth. And in the midst of this conversation, he was quoted as saying, "All religions are a path to God. They are like different languages to arrive there, but our God is a God for all." Of course, some people immediately jumped on Pope Francis, saying he was in heresy for that statement, because Jesus clearly said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one can come to the Father except through me." What is he saying when all religions are a path to God? Well, there's no question that the Pope, the Holy Father, Pope Francis, believes that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. He gave his life to him. However, Jesus is not placed in a little box for the Pope. Pope Francis knows the Jesus of the Gospels, right? He knows Jesus. And he knows that Jesus was always breaking out of the box that people were trying to place him within. But of course, the Pope, like he has been doing throughout his pontificate, is encouraging us to listen to each other, to learn from each other, to have a basic level of respect for one another as human beings. And he was doing exactly that in Singapore among the interreligious youth. There is always plenty that we can affirm within the other. And as we listen to the other, we can learn about them. And as others listen to us, they can learn about us. People will most certainly find a lot to like about Catholicism because of its revelation, because of its truth, its beauty. Others will be drawn to it because of its beauty and its truth. But the reality, our God is not restricted by the church. Our God is not restricted by the sacraments of the church. God can work beyond them. The sacramental life is the gift of Jesus, is the gift of God to the church, but they do not limit God. God can work with other people in a multitude of ways. And we can see that often in the fruit of their lives. When I was in Wolf Point, I got invited by Father Steve Tokarski to go on a pilgrimage with the people of St. Pius X here in Billings on I think it was their 50th anniversary. and they were going to Italy. And part of that, of course, included Rome. And in the Sistine Chapel, the beautiful chapel in the middle of the Vatican, there's a fresco painted on its ceiling by the artist Michelangelo. And within his painting, he's depicting 12 prophetic figures, and they all point the way to Jesus Christ. You know, I could identify some of them because 7 of them were the prophets of Israel. I could recognize at least one of those prophets, and that was Jonah, because there was a great big fish by him. But there were others. There was Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Joel, Zechariah, and Israel, and Daniel. But I could not identify the female prophets that were there, and they were female sibyls of the classical world. They were pagans. And Michelangelo put them in his painting within the Vatican because they too ultimately were pointing the way to Jesus, the truth that was within their teaching. You know, that's the theological point of that. God worked even through the pagan religions to lead others to his Son. And at first I was puzzled by it, but as I learned to sit with it, I love that inclusion within his wonderful masterpiece on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Well, it's this understanding, this sense of understanding and openness that led, you know, our saint now, Pope John Paul II, to write, and listen closely. I have wished to recall the ancient doctrine formulated by the fathers of the church, which says that we must recognize the seeds of the word present and active in the various religions. Okay, seeds of the word is capitalized, all right? Remember, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, okay? He says, which says that we must recognize the seeds of the word present and active in the various religions. This doctrine leads us to affirm that though the routes taken may be different, there is but one single goal to which is directed the deepest aspiration of the human spirit as expressed in its quest for God and also in its quest through its tendings towards God for the full dimensions of its humanity, or in other words, for the full meaning of human life. He went on and said, the seeds of truth, present and active in the various religious traditions, are a reflection of the unique Word of God, who enlightens every man coming into the world and who became flesh in Jesus Christ. Okay, so Pope John Paul II saw the seeds of truth that were present in other religious traditions. You know, of course, we believe that the fullness of truth resides in the Catholic Church. Okay? However, that doesn't negate that seeds of truth are present in other religious traditions. And we have to acknowledge that truth. We can rejoice in that truth. We don't have to bicker over that. And the same holds true for them with us, right? They should see the beauty and the truth within our own faith tradition. It goes both ways. Well, Pope John Paul's point, as well as Pope Francis, is that all religions are different routes with a single goal, and that single goal is ultimately God. John Paul II went on to explain that both the Church and that individual Catholics must carry an attitude of respect and dialogue towards other religions. He says, far from opposing the proclamation of the gospel, it prepares one for it. Okay? So when we're open to the truth within others, and they listen to us, and we listen to them, it can open us for a deeper appreciation of the gospel of Jesus, right? Because it's the fullness of truth. You know, there's a lot of wisdom and practical advice in the scriptures today from the mouths of Moses, as well as Jesus. It's present within the words of Pope Francis in Singapore, as well as in the teachings of Pope John Paul II, St. John Paul II. You know, it's good that we listen to them. But more importantly, we need to integrate their wisdom, their teaching, into the practice of our lives when we deal with others. It'll change our relationships. It'll change the world.